So you have said that there are no credible threats to the U.S., but U.S. counterterrorism officials are telling CNN that they believe there are additional plots underway in Europe. Do you expect more attacks or attempted attacks in Europe in the coming days?
Well, we're being told there are no specific credible threats, and I have to believe the officials. And it would make sense that there are probably more plots being hatched in Europe as we speak. Europe obviously is in greater danger. They're in closer proximity to the Middle East. We're seeing this surge of refugees. We now know that a couple of those terrorists came into Europe with that refugee flow. So what we're unraveling, or what the officials in Europe are unraveling, are these cells and these plots. And unfortunately, this is exactly what Islamic terrorists are trying to sow. What you're seeing in Brussels today, the type of civil unrest. They're trying to destabilize different countries, and they're doing a pretty good job of it.
Belgian police have arrested a man they call Faisal C. They've charged him with terrorist murder. Is it your understanding that Faisal C. is the man in white who got away after the airport bombing?
I have no more information than you have on that one.
It's beginning to look as though Belgian authorities did have some knowledge of the brothers who carried out the bombing at the airport beforehand, and yet authorities failed to stop the attack. Do you think that this is an example of an intelligence failure by officials in Belgium?
Well, we all have the problem of what do you do with the not guilty yet in free and democratic societies where you have the presumption of innocence. It's a very difficult problem. And of course, the number of people that have flowed from Europe into Syria, literally in the thousands and now flowing back, is obviously overwhelming the intelligence capabilities of Europe. It's a concern here in America, which is why I always go back to, we have to address the root cause of the problem. It's the instability in Syria and Iraq. It's the fact that ISIS exists, that caliphate is still standing. Remember, it was 18 months ago, in September 2014, that President Obama declared our goal, which I agree with, degrade and ultimately defeat ISIS. We haven't defeated him. I listened to Senator Sanders, and yeah, we're nibbling around the edges, and we're taking back territory in Iraq, but they're expanding territory in Syria, and obviously Islamic terrorists aren't putting down their arms. So this is a war, and we've got to take it seriously, and we've got to defeat ISIS, and we've got to find terrorists wherever they exist and wipe them out.
What are you suggesting we need to do, the U.S. government and military need to do, that they're not doing?
We need to just have a more robust effort. We need to assemble that coalition of the willing, and the reason we haven't assembled them is because we have not shown the leadership. President Obama took off the table the same day that he declared the goal, he basically took off the table the very ingredient that was going to be necessary, and that's American troops on the ground. Now, I don't think we have to have that many of them. We haven't heard out of this administration a real strategy for defeating ISIS, but we actually have to show the leadership so that the coalition of the willing will actually assemble around us. And let's face it, I think Europe is probably a little bit more primed to really join that coalition. This has got to be a long-term effort. I mean, the historic blunder of President Obama was leaving Iraq. After all the sacrifice, after the stabilization of the Iraq, we bugged out. And as a result, that coalition disintegrated, and ISIS was able to rise from the ashes of what was a defeated al-Qaeda in Iraq. We have to learn the lessons of history. We have to be relentless in our pursuit of stamping out Islamic terror.
Let's turn back to the terror investigation in France and Belgium. The only surviving terrorist from the deadly attacks in Paris this fall, Salah Abdeslam, was arrested just days before the bombings in Brussels. He wasn't even questioned until the day after his arrest, and he denied knowing the men who murdered dozens of people at the Brussels airport. Donald Trump, the Republican frontrunner, said this week he would have talked a lot faster with the torture. Do you agree?
What we really need to do, and I've been down to Guantanamo Bay and I've talked to the people that do the interviews, and the way you actually gather intelligence that's effective is over a long period of time. And what this administration has done in their quest to close down Guantanamo Bay, we stopped capturing, detaining, and questioning Islamic terrorists. Now, we're doing some of that. We're starting to capture some of the Islamic terrorists, some of the ISIS operatives. Fortunately, we captured one that was a former Iraqi chemical weapons expert, and that individual apparently started singing like canary, so we're able to take out some of those installations. But we need a long-term facility for long-term detention, and that's really how you gather intelligence, is capturing people, detaining them, and interviewing them over a long period of time, find the discrepancies between themselves, between their own testimony and that of their fellow operatives.
Let's talk about nuclear security. There's a report in a Belgian newspaper that a security guard at a nuclear plant there was murdered this week, and his access pass was stolen. Authorities discovered secret surveillance footage of a high-ranking Belgian nuclear official in the home of a man linked to the Paris attackers. Are you at all concerned that ISIS could infiltrate a nuclear plant in Europe, or is that just too far afield, do you think?
No, I'm highly concerned about that. But not only in Europe, look at the attack on the Metcalfe power station in California. We have not solved that. That's a very disconcerting chain of events here. So trust me, our critical infrastructure is vulnerable to cyber attack, to potential terrorist attack, and we are not taking this threat seriously enough. It's highly concerning.
Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Hope you have a peaceful Easter.
You too.